Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. I hope you're doing well today. Of course, it's Friday. I am here doing the ranking of the Series 2000 books. Of course, there's typically two ranking videos for every series or franchise era, whatever you want to call it, of Goosebumps. Franchise, I guess, means the whole thing, not so much series. Every time I finish up one of the series, I do a big ranking video of the worst to best stories, all of them, in that series. This one, thank God, is only 25, not 50, not 62, any of the big series like the OGs and the GYGs and all that stuff. This is just 25 books, which made it a little bit more easy, but also a little bit more difficult, because you have a lot of middle-of-the-road filler books in those bigger series to kind of put to the wayside and think about a little bit. I had to re-list everything as I sat down and really thought about these books, really refreshed my memory on them the last couple of days. And I had to reformat my list, and a lot of it looks very different. And a lot of it, even including the most recent reviews, Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls and Ghost in the Mirror, are going to rank probably higher than what I actually rated them, which in hindsight makes me feel bad about how I rated books 4 years ago when I was starting the channel out, and I had certain books that I had really, really high for ratings for that. Spongy pointed that out to me. Thank you, Spongy, because the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know, he's right. Some of the stuff that I would rate at that time over the last 4 years would be a lot higher maybe than it deserved, or maybe lower than it deserved. There are certain books you saw me back in the day that I hated deeply because some of the Series 2000 books are sequels to some of my favorites. I'm a little biased in some areas on some of my opinions on this series. I love that it's a darker series overall compared to the OG 62 Classic series, even though I think that's overall better and more creative than this series was. I have a lot of complaints and nitpicks and whatever, but you're going to see a lot of opinions in this video that are going to piss you off, places of certain books that are going to piss you off, places that you probably never would have guessed based on my individual reviews. If you haven't seen those individual reviews, it's probably better that you haven't. But if you have, or if you want to, I have reviewed every single one of these books in individual videos, somewhere between 8 and 15, 20 minutes a piece. In case you're curious and want to go check those out, they are in a playlist on my channel. With all that being said, though, just be wary that even newer reviews for books that I might have rated lower or higher, they might be in a place you don't really expect them on the list. And I kind of surprised myself the more I looked at it. And then I thought, you know, like the movie review community on YouTube typically talk about how they hate ratings for movies, like on a 5-star basis or anything. They typically don't do that anymore because of how hard it makes it when they change their rankings around and stuff. And I get that. I do get it. I prefer having a rating scale, but it can change around, it can come back to haunt you sometimes. But anyway, with all that being said, I think it's a good prologue to really start into a series that I think has so many great things about it. And somebody who's really into dark media. My two favorite films of all time being It's a Wonderful Life and Donnie Darko. My favorite Spider-Man is Andrew Garfield from the first movie, not that horrible sequel, but the first one. I love dark stuff, and I think Series 2000 really, really gets into that, even more so than the OG books did. And it really hits me just in the right way. Most of these books, compared to the OGs, compared to GYGs, or the Most Wanted, or the Horrorland series, or any of that stuff, any other series out there, I think I typically find more enjoyment in the Series 2000 books. And that's what made this list so hard to put together. And again, just so you know, I have the last cover, the original cover of a book, Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, coming in next week. I tried to get it this week. It was supposed to be here. There was a misunderstanding. I will, hopefully, God willing, get that book next week in the mail from the same seller that I bought it from first. And when that gets here, I will rank from worst to best the covers of the original covers, not the reissue covers. But for right now, like Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls, in this listing, I have to have the reissue cover from Brandon Dorman to take its place. With all that being said, though, let's jump into the 25-book list. Let's start off with to me, what is the most insulting, worst one in this list. I might have rated it higher than a lot of the books in this list. Possibly. I don't even remember. Because the book has some really good moments in it. I think all of these books, in my personal opinion, have their moments to them. Very few are just straight out bland to me. Very few are just okay to me. A lot of Series 2000 is either above average or kind of below, somewhere in that department. There's not many that feel to me personally like filler books, even though they're described typically in the community like that. This one here, I hate it. I think it's I think it's possibly one of the worst Goosebumps books out there. I have read worse, just so you know. I have read worse, But my number 25 spot is Goosebumps Series 2000, Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. If you haven't read this, you will not understand why I feel the way I feel if you saw my review. There are twists in here that just derail the story. I mean, truly derail it in the most insulting of ways, and I think that's its biggest crime for a great cover, for a book that starts out so strong about a board game and whatever, a card game, whatever, that they find and steal from not an antique show, but like a yard sale. All of that was such a great idea, and it completely fell apart because of what Stein did with this. I hate what happened with this book, and it's such a shame, dude, because it was such an engaging read for a long time. Number 24 on my list is one that I was not excited about at all. It took me a long time to get around to this trilogy of books. There is two, it's a duology in the Series 2000 context, but there's also a sequel in the GYG series. This is, in my number 24 spot, Invasion of the Body Squeezers Part 2. I know I said this was kind of middle of the road and bland and not that good compared to Part 1. They both kind of feel like the same book done over and over again. This one expands a little bit more on the alien invasion stuff of Part 1. It just doesn't land for me, dude. There's not really anything horrific about it. There's not really, not that it needs to be, but there's not really any like alien stuff that really caught my eye, was done differently, that really piqued my interest or anything like that. It's okay. It's kind of dull, frankly, in my opinion. But that's number 24, is Part 2 there. Number 23 on my list is Revenge Are Us. This one is on the bottom, basically, of a lot of people's lists. When I reviewed it at the time, I thought it was okay. And now I'm in the place of, it's underneath average for me. It's not great, frankly. I'm not a massive fan of this one. I don't think I came across like I was a massive fan of the original days, even though I love the cover of this book, by the way. Look at that. Look at that crow. Whatever. Anyway, that's not a great book. Not a great book. And I don't like the fact that it always tries to take the message and say revenge is bad. I don't agree with that at all. I'm petty enough that I don't agree with that, and I'll admit I don't agree with that. Moving along to number 22 on my list. This is going to piss a lot of people off. I know I'm going to get dragged through the coals over this one, especially the rating that I gave it. But I read this. It's my next to last Goosebumps book from Series 2000 that I read and reviewed for the channel. Just reviewed it this week, like 2 or 3 days ago. And I was not into this the way people are. Mainly because of the idea of the story, the concept of the story being a body hopping story. Very much like Jason Goes to Hell, if you've seen that from the Friday the 13th series. Not a fan of stories like that. I'm just not. Some can get it right, some cannot. Anyway, my number 22 spot is Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. A lot of people love this book. It's one of the more popular ones. It's one of the only ones to get a reissue, along with Bride of Living Dummy, The Haunted Car from the Series 2000 books. I was not into this. I do not get what people are talking about with this. Do I like it more than the other books that I just talked about that I rated higher than this? Yeah. Yeah, I do. It's again, an issue with the rating scale on videos. But I don't know how much I would change my rating for this. Maybe I'd rate the other ones lower, because I don't connect with Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls the way people do. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel. Anyway, is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. Anyway, number 21 on my list is the other part of that duology I just talked about, Invasion of the Body Squeezers Part 1. Again, kind of a meandering book, very bland, very average. From what I remember of it. It had some cool things. The mystery of the neighbor I liked a lot. The alien stuff hadn't really gotten too much into the story yet until like the ending of the book. And that was an okay setup. I don't think Part 2 really paid off. And for me personally, when Part 2 of something doesn't pay off, it's kind of like The Last Jedi from Star Wars. Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. To me, that makes The Force Awakens a weaker film. That's my opinion. I loved Force Awakens when it came out. Last Jedi ruined a lot of the steam, in my opinion. I think a lot of the community and fans of Star Wars, I think it ruined a lot of the steam that the new sequels and Disney had going for the franchise. People can say whatever they want and call me wrong on that, but I personally think that's what happened there. This one kind of is affected by Part 2 being so weak. In my personal taste, my personal opinion, in hindsight, at the time when I reviewed it, it probably seemed like I like it more than I do now, and that's because I did. I'm sorry, it's just how I feel. Alright, number 20 on the list is Brain Juice. I really didn't hate this one at all. I thought it was pretty cool when it came out, or not when it came out. not when it came out, when my review came out. I liked a lot of it. It's a different book. It's a little weird, a little bizarre, a little strange, but it's not bad. It's pretty decent. I like this one. It has its moments, is what I would say. At this current point, there is one in particular that's a sequel to one of my favorite OG books ever written. And you're probably wondering why you haven't seen it yet, and that's because I at first, this was at the bottom of my list, on my original Series 2000 list that I had organized last night, or, well, I guess a couple of days ago. And the more I sat down and thought about this particular list and how I had to just reformat, because I didn't think it was fair to a lot of books, this is one of the ones that went up quite a few listings on my 25 book list for the Series 2000 ranking, because I felt like I wasn't being fair to this book. There's a lot of other things in these other books I just talked about that I hate a lot more than what happened here. I think this is a giant swing and a miss as a sequel to a book that I think a lot of people have come around to over the years, like myself, which was called Ghost Camp. This book here, number 19, is Return to Ghost Camp. I love the cover, but what a disappointing book. What a disappointing book. There's like an identity misunderstanding in the book. I haven't read it in like 4 years, and I just... the more that I think about this book, the more angry I get a lot of the time. But I feel like that with these other books too. Especially Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. This one, I think, is a great disservice to the original Ghost Camp. If you're a big fan of Ghost Camp, like myself, with that amazing cover, that amazing story, with all the urban legend storytelling in that, this one gets so much wrong as a direct sequel to that. And I feel personally like this one's so poorly received by a lot of fans of Ghost Camp and the franchise fandom. I feel like they never made like a GYG book based on Ghost Camp, which would have been cool with all the urban legend stuff you could do with that, even though there's a lot of camping books out there for Goosebumps, especially in the GYG franchise, or era, series, whatever. I feel like this ruined that. That's my opinion. I feel like we never got a Ghost Camp episode from the TV show because of this. That's my opinion on that. Because I feel like Ghost Camp was coming up. I do. I could be wrong. It was never said anywhere as far as I know, but I think that was up next. Maybe they were afraid to make that because it was too close to Welcome to Camp Nightmare, but oh well. This one I think deserved higher than what I was originally going to give it. I was going to put it at the bottom of the list, or right there with Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid, maybe right above that, but just in good conscience, I enjoyed this a little bit more than everything else I talked about just previous to this. So I wanted to be fair. I try to be fair, and eventually, after re-listing this list, eventually when I do my big ranking video of every book, God willing I last long enough to be able to do that, you know, all my equipment and my life and everything, God willing, if I ever get around to reviewing every Goosebumps book released when Stein was around, which is kind of my goal with that, when that happens, I'm going to have to remake that list as well. And it's going to be a massive pain because we're talking hundreds of books. I don't even want to think about it. It gets me overwhelmed. Anyway, moving along. Moving along to number 18 on my list. This one's a little bit higher than a lot of people would have put it, but for me personally, in hindsight, again, I think it's better than the previous books I talked about. It's not horrifically offensive. It's kind of a retelling of a Tales to Give You Goosebumps Halloween short story that I like more than this book. I think the concept works better as a short story than the actual book we got here. But this book is Full Moon Fever. And that's supposed to be like a werewolf on the front. The book is not about werewolves at all. Just so you know. Moving along to the next one that was in the Werewolf Review-a-thon with that book. This one is number 17, Werewolf in the Living Room. I liked this one a lot. I thought it was really cool. It has some cool things in it. It's not a wonderful book by any means, but the idea of taking somebody prisoner who you think might be a werewolf is pretty cool. And putting the cage in your living room. I liked all that. I have good memories of it. This was at a time when you could have guns and Goosebumps, which was a bizarre time that we don't do that anymore because it's not allowed, because people will get offended, you know. But Werewolf in the Living Room had some really cool, dark elements to it. I liked the predicament the main character got into of having to think whether he should talk to this person that's being held captive, whether it's okay for him to be held captive. It was interesting. I liked all that. Moving along to number 16 on my list. That is one that I think people wouldn't rate as high as I did. I think I liked it more than most people, though, even though it's not like an amazing book by any means. I Am Your Evil Twin. I liked it. I thought it had its cool moments. It's not amazing or anything. It's what it is, you know? Kind of a stalker story with somebody who looks just like you. I like it. Not bad, in my opinion. Alright, we're going over to the next stack now. I'm moving it around here on this tote I have beside my chair. Reorganizing, just bear with me. Alright, number 15. Wow, we're in the top 15 already. Number 15 on my list is The Mummy Walks. I reviewed this way back in the day before I got married in my Mummy Marathon that I reviewed all of the Mummy-themed books in Goosebumps. And this was a weaker one, but I do think it's a really solid Series 2000 book. I enjoyed it. It's not really a mummy-devoted book. There's a lot of mummy books that are like that. This is not really devoted to the idea of a mummy thing, but it's kind of like a straight-out adventure story, very much like an Uncharted type of story, if you've played those games. And I really like that about it. It's not great or anything, but it's really good. I like what it is, you know? The next one here, number 14 on my list. My nose is just so bad, dude. It's so sunny outside. I feel like allergies are peaking today because of that. I'm having a hard time talking and thinking and all that. It's a rough one. Pray for me. Anyway, number 14 on my list is Jekyll and Hyde. This one's a little bit lower than a lot of people would probably rate it too. I like this one. It's good. Has a nice Jekyll and Hyde kind of throwback to it with the Uncle Jekyll story in here with this little girl that's her main character. I liked a lot of it. It's kind of that mad scientist type of story from what I remember of it. I didn't even remember that I read this a couple of months ago. It wasn't very long ago, maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And I made a community post talking to you guys about that my brain, I'm not even 30 yet. I turned 28 in November last year, in 2022. And the more I think about some of these Series 2000 books, the more I wish I had just done what some people do, like Monster Blood, which is my friend Austin. I wish that I had done what he did about just kind of reading everything in a series back to back, like in order, or like in that general area, like read all the 62 out of order or something like that. I wish I had done that. If I had gone back in time and talked to myself when I started up this Goosebumps channel, I think I should have done that. And when you focused on like the GYG stuff, you probably would have lost people. I don't know, a lot of people like that series, but it gets kind of hard to talk about after a time because a lot of them are just like 3 out of 5 star books. If I could go back in time, I would have done what a lot of you guys out there in the community do, like David Popovich, and I would have just reviewed like everything in a series and then got that series over with and moved to the next thing, because it feels like it would have been a lot simpler, in my opinion, than what I chose to do. But Jekyll and Hyde is one that I completely forgot about, and then the more I looked into it, the more I watched my review and got onto the Goosebumps wiki to really get the spoilers back in my brain to really understand what I was thinking about, because I forgot so much of it. It was good. I liked it at the time, and I don't know why I feel like it's so forgettable, but I've talked to other people like Goosebumps Completionist, who is another friend of mine, and he and like Grayson and a lot of people that I've talked to will talk about how we just forget things that we read because there's so many Goosebumps books, so many things I've reviewed over the 4 years I've been doing this. Some things just leak right out. You know what I mean? Like they just ooze right out of your brain. Whatever word you'd like to use to make it liquefied just kind of goes away. You know, and I'm not even 30 yet and that's happening. It's horrible. Anyway, that's my opinion on Jekyll and Hyde, my long tangent about that. Number 13, this is one I recently read and I really, really liked it. I think it was one of the last 4 I read, and that is Scream School. Really surprising. I like horror films, as many of you guys know, and this one surprised me quite a bit. Very much about that, very much about a father who's a famous director messing with his kid, who is our main character, who is kind of a scaredy cat, but kind of not. He likes horror as well. But his dad is cruel and mean, and he has to kind of go on a movie set with his dad at an abandoned school out in the desert. I really like the story. I think it has a lot going for it. Really a good recommendation for me, for people who haven't read Series 2000 yet, want something that's not too scary, but has some elements of that to it. I like Scream School quite a bit. Alright, number 12. This one might be a controversial pick. But I'm a big fan of this particular monster, this particular, I guess there's really only 2 books in the series so far focused on this particular monster. Creature Teacher. I like this book a lot. I thought it was really solid. I thought it had a lot going for it. It's kind of cute, kind of fun. I like Mrs. Marge, or however you say her name. Marg? I don't know, it's supposed to sound like you're screaming. I like her a lot. Very fun villain, very memorable villain for me. One of those ones that I think are better than Murder the Clown. In my personal opinion. Don't shoot at me. Just saying. That's my very controversial Goosebumps opinion today. Number 11, before we get into the top 10, number 11 for me is another controversial pick that I feel like a lot of people would put in their top 10. I like it a lot. I think it gets close to that, but it just doesn't make it just a little bit for me because of my interest in some other things I'll talk about soon, and that is Cry of the Cat. A lot of people really love this one, and rightfully so. It's a really solid read, really good read. I like this one a lot. I recommend it to you guys. This is the first ever this is the first ever Goosebumps Series 2000 book. And it has its audience for a reason. It's a really good way to kick off this series, and it's a dark book, dude. The chick in this book runs over this cat, and possibly even decapitates the cat, and the cat just keeps showing up everywhere. It's pretty horrific. Personally, I think the ending is a little too silly. That's kind of what threw it off out of the top 10 for me. And that's just me, though. Alright, top 10. Top 10. What are your guesses for the top 10 on my list? Because there's quite a few picks here, and quite a few controversial picks, in my opinion. I don't think you guys are going to get the order of my top 5. I really don't. Maybe the top, like, the next 5, but, like, the top 5, the last 5? No, I don't think you guys are going to get that one. Anyway, so, number 10 on my list, out of the top 10, is Are You Terrified Yet? I like stories about pranks. I like stories about people dealing with pranks and pulling pranks on people. That's pretty much what this book is, but personally I think it's kind of creepy, particularly scenes like this in here with this great cover about a jar filled with spiders you have to stick your hand in. That is really horrific. It reminds me, in a lot of ways, of the book, what is it about, Eat the Worms? What is it called? Not the Goosebumps book, Go Eat Worms, but How to Eat Fried Worms. That's what I'm thinking of. It's one of those books all of us probably read in elementary school or had read to us. And in a lot of ways, this reminds me of the things I remember about that book. Maybe I'm deadly wrong, but that's just what I remember. But number 10, I think this deserves it. I really like it a lot. I like it a lot more than most people, I think, the more I think back at it. I think it's cool. I like it a lot. All right, number 9. This one's going to be controversial. This was the last Series 2000 book to ever be released. Number 25. That is number 9 on my list again. Ghost in the Mirror. This one, I didn't rate it as high as a lot of people I think wanted me to rate it. But I will tell you this, the atmosphere is amazing here. The scares are amazing here. It has so many great things going for it. It is a creepy book about a haunted mirror. This kid gets some new furniture for his bedroom. Even though his family can't really afford it, they get it from a yard sale, pretty cheap for a good deal. The dad wants to fix some of it up. But this particular mirror he gets has a note with it that says that it's a cursed mirror, basically, and that you're cursed if you bring this into your house. And the things that happen here, they are truly horrific. I really think because of the atmosphere, the writing here, Stein really nailed a lot of that. But I do think there's a couple of silly things in here. For me personally, that kind of drag it down a little bit. Kind of like Cry the Cat. It drags it down a little bit where I really don't think it gets in my top 5. I don't think it lands there for me. But for a lot of folks, this is very well received. I had a lot of people ask me to read this for a long time. And like I said, I just recorded a review and uploaded right before this video for the review for this. And I think my rating are probably going to piss people off, but I just don't think it lands where a lot of people thought it would land for me, even though I liked and loved a lot of the book. And just so you know, too, it has a couple of gory moments in it, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Not that it completely surprised me. There are gory Goosebumps books, especially in the Most Wanted franchise. But it surprised me what I saw in here. It really did. Anyway, moving along to number 9 on my list. No, number 8 on my list. This one is a sequel. It's the first ever sequel to an OG series book that involves a carnival theme park type of thing, and that book is Return to Horrorland. I thought this book was average in my brain recently, but when I read it, apparently I gave it a 5 out of 5 star review when I rated it back in the day. I think I would lean more towards like a 4 now, but this is really good. Some of the things I remember, like the kinds of candies and stuff you can actually eat in the theme park, are really cool. I think it's a brother-sister story, but I remember one of the big things I didn't think about at the time that I really wish had paid off was the ending. I feel like the conclusion of the story, the final chapter of the story, where it leaves off, for me personally, I don't think it really got where it should have been. I feel like I would have rated it lower back in the day if I'd really thought about it more. I think I was just so excited about getting into Goosebumps and doing reviews for you guys, talking about Horrorland and that kind of thing, because that's really popular too. The channel is starting to grow quite a bit. I think over time my tastes have changed a little bit. It's been 4 years, you know, how could it not? But I think I would rate this one lower, but I still really, really like it, and I do recommend it, as obviously it's in my top 8, top 10, whatever. But number 8's pretty high. Out of 25 books, this is a really good one. This one here might seem like blasphemy to have it as high as it is, but I'm sorry. I think it deserves to be where it is. And that book is number 7 on my list, Fright Camp. bunch of kids are going to a camp focused around a movie, and the first thing that happens in this book is that some guy gets on the bus and kidnaps the kids and drives like a maniac everywhere. That is a great opening. It had me truly concerned for these kids when I started reading the book, and the book itself is a little different than what you would expect it to be, but the camp atmosphere and all that I think really worked. I really liked a lot of that. I read this during the camping marathon book reviews I did, and I enjoyed it a lot. I still think it's pretty much, to me, better than a lot of these, because I like the directions it goes. It's not going to be for everybody. Let me make that very clear. I don't think Fright Camp is going to be as good for everybody. If you're a big movie fan, I think this has a lot for you. But if I were a kid in the 90s and there was a camp like this, focused around a horror movie type of director, you know, really celebrating him, I feel like I would have wanted to go to this. If my parents would have let me, I probably would have tried to have gone to something like this. But that's just me. Again, personal bias. I'm sorry. That's just how I feel. All right, number 6. We're almost in the top 5. We're getting close. Number 6, I think, would surprise you, because I was pretty fair about my opinions on a lot of these top 6 books. I had a very hard time with my top 10. My bottom 5, yeah, but my top 10 especially, because I loved and liked so many of these books. But I think from this point on, I pretty much loved a lot of these books. Not all of the parts of them, but loved most of each of these books. This particular one, number 6 on my list, is Bride of the Living Dummy. I grew up watching the episode over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, when Hollywood Video stopped renting VHS tapes and they were trying to make more room for DVDs, they got rid of all their VHS tapes and you could buy them for like 50 cents or $1 a piece. And I have the copy that I've reviewed here on the channel. I showed off my VHS of that copy of Bride of the Living Dummy that I rented all the time from Hollywood Video. I have the actual copy. I couldn't get Dummy 3, the episodes of that, on VHS. I had to buy an actual VHS of that. Somebody bought that, somebody bought Haunted Mask 1 and 2, but I got Bride on VHS, and I'm very happy about that. It's a great memory of mine. It's a VHS that I love deeply. It's so good if you haven't seen that episode, and I think it's better than this book, frankly. For me personally, just because of my tastes, I'm a 90s fan, I'm a Slappy fan. This book is good if you're a Slappy fan, a really good read. But it's got its flaws, you know. It's not super engaging in the sense of if you're not into dummy books, this is not going to be for you. If you're not a big Slappy fan or you think there is too many Slappy books, because there probably are, you're probably not going to be obsessed with this either. But at the time, this was book number 2 of Series 2000. I love the cover. I love so many things about it. Sadly, mine is an Indian copy. It has the very hard cardboard cover to it. But oh well, I mean, this is the first time I ever owned Bride of the Living Dummy in a copy physically, you know. I enjoyed the book a lot. I thought it had a lot to offer. I do think the episode is better, though. All right, here we are. Top 5, folks. Top 5. What do you think they're going to be? I'd love to see some comments down below, predictions on that, before I get into it. I'm going to give you a moment. Take a little sip of what I think is left in my drink. I don't think there's anything in here. Nope, there's nothing. All right, time's up. Number 5 on my list. This is one I recently read, one of my last 4 or 5 that I read, and I thought it was really, really good. I was very impressed with how much I loved it. Very, very good read. Very much a fun read. I had a lot of good things to say about it. I still think it's a really big recommendation for me. This is the last, or next to last, book to ever be released from Series 2000, before the 8-year gap until Horrorland came out. And that book is Earth Geeks Must Go. Yes, that's my number 5 pick. I never thought in a million years, reading these books over the last 4 years. Did you hear that? Did you hear this guy flying down the road in his car? Are you trying to die? Anyway, Earth Geeks Must Go. I never would have thought ever that this would have been in my top 5 of these books. But I loved this. I thought it was fantastic. I really do recommend it for you. If you haven't read it before, it's a great read. Big recommendation for me. Really, really, really solid. Number 4 on my list. This one I recently read as well in my last like 5 books. And I will tell you, this one surprised me too. I've loved the cover for a long time. Of course, I only own an Indian copy. But I loved it. I thought it was, to me, it truly had some tension. It had a lot going for it. And all it was about was a cursed ring that may or may not have some kind of demon, entity, ghost, something living inside of it. And that book is, number 4 on my list, Horrors, of the Black Ring. I loved this book. I thought it was great. I thought it was so good. I wouldn't change almost anything about it, maybe one thing in there. I loved this. I feel like a lot of people don't like this as much as I do. I think it's a freaking classic. I love, like Goosebumps Completionist said, haunted object stories like The Haunted Mask, or like kind of Slappy. He's not really haunted, but you know what I'm saying. Maybe he is. I don't know. You can debate that. He has a ghost in the Slappy World series. I love this book. I thought it had so much going for it. It was super spooky, had a great atmosphere, great tension, like I said, building around this school and the teacher that has the ring stuck on her hand. I loved it. I think it was so good. The ending is a bit rushed. A little bit rushed. I don't know if I talked about that in my review. I might have forgotten to. But I remember the ending being a little rushed when I read it about two or so weeks ago. But that's a really good read. Really good. Big recommendation for me if you haven't read it before. And here we are in the top 3 books. Top 3, dude. Here we are. The Series 2000 books are going to be done. I did GYG's official finishings, I think it was last week. Was that last week? Yeah, I think I ranked them all last weekend. Or not weekend, but last week. For the Give Yourself Goosebumps, Choose Your Own Adventure type stuff. And here we are about to finish up Series 2000 as well, before I do the cover videos. Or video. Man, I can't believe this is almost over. Number 3 on my list is one that I also read recently, and this was fantastic. Mainly with the atmosphere. It's kind of a slow build. It's kind of a rip-off of a Stephen King book, and that probably gives it away. The Haunted Car. The Haunted Car is fantastic. There is a reason that they dug this up for the Goosebumps movie in 2015. The Haunted Car is freaking fantastic. I love it. It has some great ghost feeling to it. It has like it's very much a ripoff of Christine, and I think more than people give it credit for. I talked with some of you guys down in the comment section of this review the other day. I think I made this review on like Monday of this week. I talked in the comment section with a lot of you that some of you, quite a few of you as a matter of fact, disagree that you don't think it's a ripoff of Christine, but I think it's a little bit closer than people give it credit for. But even with that being said, I think it's a better book than Christine. I think Christine's movie from John Carpenter is amazing. But this is great. This is truly great, truly scary. I think the events with the ghost haunting the car are really creepy. There's some twists in here that I don't really follow the logic too much. I think the logic is a little wonky around some things towards the end, but most of it, like 98% of it, I love. I think it's freaking great. Have you read Haunted Car? If you have not, you're missing out. This is one of the ones who got a reissue. If you can find it at your Barnes & Noble or something, pick it up. But Barnes & Noble is really expensive now, so try not to do that. Get it off of like Amazon or something if you can get it cheaper. Alright, these top 2, mainly this pick for number 2, is going to get me in trouble, because as you know, I did a very big ranting video review for this particular book. And this was going to be number 1, even after all the ranting I did. But the other book that I did make number 1 this time on this particular version of my list, when I really finalized it today, I had to admit that I think the one that I do have for number 1 is perfect. I wouldn't change anything about that one at all. This one, I hate the final chapter. I think the final chapter of this book is what ruins it. And when I made my ranting video, I think I rated it way lower than it actually deserved. I don't remember for sure, but I could be wrong. But this book, the final chapter really pissed me off. I should have taken a cue by some obvious signs with the book. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. I've complained about this for a long time. I'm a big Slappy fan, which I think just gave it away. But my number 2 pick is Slappy's Nightmare. I love this cover. I did not know this book existed until I started collecting Goosebumps again back in like 2019, I think is when I started the channel up. I really started reading them again back in my back injury days in 2018 before I started the channel. And Slappy's Nightmare, when I found out this existed, I think Goosebumps Aussie Fan is the one who brought this to my attention here on YouTube. And thank you, Bjorn, for that. I picked this up immediately. Of course, all you can really find are like the Indian covers like this. I have 2 copies and both have the Indian style to them, where they're bootlegs, basically. Which I don't really care. I just wanted to read the book at the time. I would like to find a real copy, but maybe one day, maybe not. I don't know. I'm not willing to pay $50 for this. The ending is really, in my opinion, horrible. I think it ruins the book. But I had to be fair and really think, because back in the day I had this very low in my rating, or ranking. There's a reason this one is loved. I can't understand why it's not in a reissue yet, or ever. I don't understand that. It's a very hard book to come by. With that being said, though, this is a dark book. A very dark book. This book has things like babies getting strangled. You know, like it has some dark stuff in it that I'm not even a parent. And a lot of the stuff in here really got to me. The whole concept is that Slappy has to do good deeds. And every time he tries to do that, it kind of, you know, blows up in his face. And you're getting into the mind of Slappy, him being your main character. Not a kid, not an adult. Slappy is your main character here. And it's fascinating, the stuff that Stein does with Slappy in this book. This, to me, if I'm being fair, I'm really thinking about it, even though I was mad at the time when I made my review for the book, as I read the book up until that final chapter, I loved every moment of it. And I said that in my review, too. It's a flawed book, but it's a great book. It really is. I think it's a great read. If you can get your hands on a bootleg copy, I got mine for like $10 for either copy. If you can get your hands on it, I recommend it. It's really good. It's just, if I were you, I wouldn't read the final chapter. I feel like it ruins the story. I loved everything else about this, though. I think it's a great read. But is it better than my number one pick? I don't think so. My number one pick is one that I love deeply. I read this years ago. I have 2 copies of it because I love it so much. It's one that is so underrated. So underrated. It's one of the best Halloween-themed Goosebumps books out there. And that is Headless Halloween. Look at this cover, man. Look at this. It's one of my favorite covers. One of my favorite covers ever. But especially from Series 2000, who typically have excellent covers for almost every book in them. Or in it, as a series. Headless Halloween is basically about a kid getting lost on Halloween. He always pulls a prank about not having a head, and that backfires on him pretty badly the way Slappy's whole thing backfired on him. This is such a great read. This is such a great read, and I'm glad that people are getting more on board with it nowadays than they used to, because I had never heard of it, and I can't believe that this was not more popular. I know Series 2000 was affected by the popularity of Harry Potter, like I said earlier. But this book, to me, is one of the best Goosebumps books ever written. I really believe that. This is like in my top 20, probably. I don't know. Maybe if I'll reformat my list, maybe I'll change my mind. But Headless Halloween, with the feeling of fall, with the feeling of Halloween night, the cold breeze, the environment, the kid getting lost, all of that, the strange people that he meets in this book. It's truly creepy. It's truly atmospheric, and I think it's a fantastic, phenomenal read. If you've not read Headless Halloween, this is my number one pick for a reason. I really think it's underrated heavily, and to me personally, I think that it's scarier in a lot of ways, not always, but in a lot of ways, compared to Slappy's Nightmare. But again, I wouldn't change anything about the book. I think that Slappy's Nightmare's ending, if it had not been there, that final chapter, that would have been my number one. Like I said a minute ago when I was talking about the top 2. That was going to be my number one as I thought about my previous list. Even though I originally kind of had it lower, and then it slowly climbed up the more I thought about my kind of unfairness because of how bad the ending was. This one is so great, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. And I mean that. Headless Halloween is one of Stein's underrated masterpieces, in my opinion. It's not as good as like Haunted Mask 1 and 2. But it's up there. It's very much up there in like the top Halloween books Stein ever wrote. And with that being said, I recommend it highly. I hope you check it out sometime if you get a chance to get your hands on it. If you happen to have it and you just haven't read it yet, please do yourself a favor and read it during October. When the fall is around, when the cold is around, when the pumpkins are around, the decorations are out. Save it for then. Do not read this mid-year or like summertime or springtime. Do not do that. Read it during the fall. Believe me, the environment, the atmosphere outside, the feel of your day will make that book better. I really believe it. Like Haunted Mask 1 and 2 and 4. All that being said, though, here we are at the end of the list. What did you guys think about my my ranking of the Series 2000 books? I can't believe it's over, dude. There's so many things we're wrapping up here soon. I think I'm in my last 15 books to review for the Goosebumps channel. And that might take about 3 weeks. Maybe a little bit longer, depending on how the next 3 weeks go. Work is going to start picking up some speed here soon, now that we're heading into spring. We have a couple of months, not really many months, like 1 month, until spring really hits, but it's going to start amping up. I'm trying to get all this wrapped up before then, so I don't have to delay everything for you guys. I have a lot going on with that, and it's going to be busy. So I want to get those 15 books reviewed ASAP, basically, ASAP. and get them out there, because you guys deserve it. You've had to wait around 2 years with how I've been just kind of, you know, walking around doing nothing, working on other stuff, other channels and all that. I think you guys deserve it, and I know it's a lot at one time, getting 2 and 3 videos a day, sometimes 1, but I think you guys deserve the content. I want to get it out there as fast as possible during the weekdays, and I just want to thank you all for being here with me, watching these videos, commenting back and forth with me all the time. I really appreciate you guys for sticking around for so long. Almost 4 years I've been doing this. On the 28th of February will be 4 years of this. That's crazy. That's truly crazy. But thank you all. I really appreciate you all, and I hope that you know that. With all that being said, though, yeah, that's the end of the Series 2000 books. I am going to do a cover ranking next, as I've said over and over again throughout this review and the different Series 2000 reviews I've been doing. And next week I will be ranking the TV books, because I only have about 2 of those left as well. So I'll be getting to that very soon. With all that being said, though, what did you guys think about my list? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you guess my top 10 or my top 5? I'd love to hear all that down below, too. Let me know your lists, especially. I really want to highlight that. I really want to know what you guys think, if you've read all of these, or even if you have like a top 5 or a worst 5 or whatever you have. Top 10, I'll take anything you want to give me. What's your favorite, least favorite? I'd love to hear all that down below, too, if you haven't read many of them. With all that being said, though, thank you for being here once again. God bless you guys. Hope you have a great weekend, and I hope this video was a great topping for your weekend to start off on. But next week we have a lot of content coming towards you when I get that other Series 2000 book cover. I'll rank that, and the TV books, I'm ranking the covers and the actual stories of that, even though I'm not super excited for that, but I have 2 more and I'm done. Then I can get into the good stuff, like Triple Header, and the companion TV book thing all of us have bought, but I'm like the only person who hasn't talked about it yet. And the Hall of Horrors series is left, and then we have the My Life books. You know, the Stein book and the Tim Jacobus book that I haven't reviewed yet. I wanted to kind of save those to be the final 2 books I review, so, you know, I'll get there eventually. With all that being said, though, thank you guys again for being here. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your Super Bowl if you're going to watch it. I will not be, because my Vikings aren't there, so. Oh well. Anyway, thank you guys. God bless you. Goodbye.